Welcome and hello. Today we are having another adventure in visibility, and this adventure is going to be all about how authors and entrepreneurs use crowdfunding to get more visibility for their books and projects. I'm Denise Wakeman, your host and guide to getting better visibility on the web. You can get updates for future adventures at adventuresinvisibility.com. Now, if you're an author or an online entrepreneur, crowdfunding can be a very intriguing idea. It can be it's kind of a sexy idea to, get people to pay for your thing before you make it. So whether it's a book or a product, that's something that a lot of people are attracted to doing. Now, today, my guest is Ryan Hanley, and Ryan had a very successful crowdfunding campaign, and what did he do? He exceeded his campaign goal and raised over $10,000 for his book in just 21 days. So that's why I invited him on to Adventures in Visibility, because I wanted to find out how he did that, and specifically what his strategies and tactics were that helped him exceed that goal, because it is very hard to do. If you've done any crowdfunding, or if you've followed any crowdfunding campaigns, you know that it takes a big commitment. So today I'm very happy to welcome Ryan. Ryan is the president of Hanley Media Lab, a content marketing consultancy that helps companies grow their audience in order to grow their business. Ryan also produces the really super popular Content Warfare podcast and Hangout show. If you haven't seen that yet, I highly recommend it. Ryan is a rising star on Google+, and you want to be sure to catch his content. So if you haven't circled him yet, do that. His podcast is consistently one of the most downloaded content marketing podcasts on iTunes. And he is the author of the soon-to-be-released Content Warfare: How to Find Your Audience, Tell Your Story, and Win the Battle for Attention Online. I had to read that title because it's really long. So, Ryan, welcome to the show today. I'm really excited to have you here with me today.
Thanks for having me, Denise. It's a pleasure, and I'm really looking forward to this.
Yeah, it's going to be a good conversation. Now, I wanted to just say that, Ryan, you and I met in real life, which is really exciting, at Social Media Marketing World earlier this year. And it's always a pleasure to meet people that you know online in person, and I think that just sort of strengthens the connections and the relationships that you have. So for any of you out there thinking about going to live events, if you can do it, because you're going to meet the people that you know virtually, and that really changes the whole dynamic of your friendship and as colleagues. So Ryan, that was really nice to meet you.
Yeah, that was fun. Great event. Met a lot of great people. And what I find is, even with our own relationship, is that once you've met someone in real life, there's always a little more connection in the digital world. Even if you're not constantly talking in the digital world, there's always that thing. We had a chance to meet and make a connection and, talk face to face. And it really does change the dynamic of your relationships in the digital world.
I agree. So that's important to do, you guys out there. Don't stick only online. Okay, so first of all, I want to congratulate you for your successful campaign. I was very honored to be one of your contributors, and I can't wait to see your book or read it. So congratulations. We'll start there.
Thank you.
Then the most obvious question I want to start with, and that is, why did you decide to crowdfund your book?
Okay, so this is, so I am like many authors who've never published a book before. I'm going to do air quotes for anyone who listens to who has this behind a screen is doing something else right now. I was writing a book for about 2 years, and I would tell people all the time, I'm writing a book. And sure, I really was. I mean, I occasionally would put words on a page, but nothing was really happening as far as moving it towards actually becoming a reality. And a good friend of mine, Tom Morkis, I was telling him about this book that I was writing and how I've just struggled to take it to the next level. And he said, you need to talk to a guy by the name of Guy Vincent. Guy Vincent is the founder of a startup crowdfunding platform specifically geared towards authors called Publishizer. Um, and I just said, okay. So I took the phone call. We spent an hour and a half on him. I fell in love with both his attitude towards self-publishing. He calls it hacking self-publishing because you're raising funds to kind of do self-publishing in a very professional manner. And I hadn't even considered crowdfunding before that, but after talking to him, I thought a lot about it. I said it came down to two main reasons. I wanted to validate my idea for the book. Right? I'd been writing this book for a long time. I obviously believed in the ideas myself, but I wanted to validate the idea. The second part of it was I wanted to activate my audience before I actually launched the book out to the public, to Amazon. So I wanted to have a core group of people who were invested in this project and interested in seeing it become a success before I actually launched it to the public. And there's a lot of different ways to do that, and crowdfunding isn't the only way that I will do that, but it was a big part of it. So I wanted to validate the idea and activate an audience, and thankfully it seems like that happened.
Okay, I'm glad you mentioned activating your audience, because I'll be asking you about that in a little bit. But so tell us a little bit about Publishizer and why you chose that platform. I mean, you liked the guy when you talked to him, but there are other crowdfunding platforms like Kickstarter and Indiegogo. So what was it about that platform in particular that attracted you to that one to make you say yes?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I did look at Kickstarter, I did look at Indiegogo, I looked at both of those. What I liked about Publishizer is that Publishizer, so maybe it wasn't the best, and we discussed this a little bit in the green room, maybe tactically using Publishizer was not the best decision for me from a total amount of contributions that I could have possibly gotten. I'm completely aware of that fact, that Publishizer is a startup. And in that, and what Denise and I were talking about in the green room was the fact that Kickstarter has a built-in fan base, a built-in audience that is agnostic of any particular project, right? So a lot of people just go and peruse Kickstarter for interesting ideas, cool ideas, new books that they want to support, things they want to be part of, and they actually look for things to support. That is not the case with Publishizer because it's relatively new. I think there's only like something close to around 100 books have been produced through Publishizer platform so far. So it wasn't that. It was more the idea that Publishizer kind of embodied, and Guy himself, the founder, embodied the idea of, and the energy and the enthusiasm of what the content warfare book was really all about, was building an audience, having this story around it. Guy's got this whole story about he used to be in the publishing world, and he really wanted to help authors who were struggling in that space, so we wanted to build a platform specifically geared for authors, and he has a lot of insight in that world. And I just really became enamored by the fact that this platform fits the message that I'm trying to get out into the world through my book, and I just felt like it was kind of serendipitous, and so I decided to go that route.
So does Guy Vincent also provide, in the background, provide guidance and support?
Yes,
to
that was a big
and
part
other
of
authors?
it. Yeah, it was that, things like, hey, we're 10 days out, like you need to get me your video so we can have that up, and I would bounce ideas off him for things that I thought would be good ways of driving traffic to the page, and he would say, well, we've had someone do that didn't really work, or maybe you should try spinning it this way, or here's something that seems to have some good traction, think about doing that. Like one of the things he really wanted me to do that I didn't end up doing, mostly just because I got a little overwhelmed towards the end, was like a slide share presentation. So one of his ideas was, hey, take some of the best quotes that you have in the book so far, pull people through the like 30,000-foot narrative using a SlideShare document. That's a really good way to give people a deeper understanding of what the book is and generate some support and give them a new kind of shareable product that helps drive engagement. And I wish that I had done that. I hadn't thought about it. That was his idea. And in his perfect world, I would have done that for the book. But that was a big part of it, too, was that I felt like I was getting very personalized service throughout this process. I mean, I don't know if as his platform grows, he'll always be able to do that, but right. For me, and I know for any author that gets in now with him, you get that and his expertise, and I found it to be invaluable in my success.
Okay, well, I think that is also something that, anybody is going to be looking for is a guide on the way, because crowdfunding is a very complex piece of the puzzle for
Yeah.
promoting something. So you talk about 3 steps to successfully crowdfund a project, and you mentioned one of them initially, which was activate your audience. What are the other 2 steps? And could you tell us a little bit about each of them and how they work?
So the first step is the most important step to crowdfunding. This is a must do before you even consider crowdfunding, maybe on every platform except for Kickstarter, and I'll get to why that's the case. The very first step to successfully crowdfunding any project, a book, really to launching anything, is you have to have an audience first, right? The thing with Publishizer is that no audience came along with being, just because I made my thing live, my campaign live, I mean, that doesn't mean anybody has any reason to go there. No one would have ever found it. So I had to have built up trust, value, relationships with an audience first, that when I decided to put this campaign out there, I could reach into that audience and say, for those of you who are willing, who are interested, who are enthusiastic about this brand, about the messaging, here's a deep dive that I think you're really going to be interested in, is really going to help you in your business, and I'd like you to support this. If I didn't have that audience that I could, and that's getting into the activation side, but if I hadn't built that audience first over really 5 years, but essentially 2 years of being in the digital space and talking about content and digital marketing, it would have been a complete failure. There would have been, my mom and my wife, and maybe I could have convinced a couple other family members and friends, and that would have been it. I mean, literally, that would have been it. It would have been unsuccessful. And when I look at things like Kickstarter and I look at the projects that are unsuccessful, what I really end up seeing, I mean, sometimes they tactically do things bad and stuff, but most of the time it's because they had a great idea and never bothered to build an audience around the idea or the concept first. They just put the idea out there and thought on its own the idea had enough merit to generate attention. Right. You need to have an amazing idea that is just so timely, and almost, it's like it ends up being fortuitous that process works. That is the exception, right? We read about some of those exceptions. Someone threw something up on a whim and bam, all of a sudden it's funded and then it's that never happens, right? That's the New York Times article that's once in 5 years they write about. Mm-hmm. That is not the case for most projects. Most projects have a built-in audience that generates the initial buzz, and then that gets you to activation, which is you build this audience, you then bring them in, and we can talk about some of the tactics to do that if you want. And the third step is ultimately empowering them to share, and a lot of that has to do with giving them good messaging, giving your audience good messaging, giving them things like images or video that they feel is a good representation of themselves, that they are comfortable sharing with their audience, which then expands your message, and that's kind of the virality of a crowdfunding campaign. But those are the 3 kind of 30,000-foot steps that you have to go through to be successful.
So you have to build your audience, activate your audience,
and empower them.
Empower your audience.
Yes.
So, I would say that, many authors call, the build your audience phase, that's building your platform. And I work with a lot of authors too, and that seems to always be where the weak spot is that the author wants to write the book, but they don't have an audience yet.
Yeah.
And who was it that said, maybe it was either Seth Godin, I think it was Seth Godin who said many years ago, it's like, you have to build your audience, are you going to write a book? Well, you need to start building your audience 2 years ago.
Yeah. You know what that is? It's the idea of being a technician versus a business person. Right, this happens in every industry across the board. When an author doesn't want to build their audience, they're a technician. They want to write books, and that's perfectly fine. And but what that author has to understand is that if you are going to be a technician, which means you're just going to write books and focus on that, you are going to have to pay someone for their audience in order to get your book to where you want it to be, which is why so many authors have to lean on traditional publishing, because they're saying, I am unwilling slash unable to build an audience, so I am going to give up the vast majority of my profits in order to take the audience that this publisher should have, most time doesn't, and take their audience, right? Where the reason self-publishing works and the reason self-publishing is really being taken on by storm are the authors who are saying, I'm willing to put in the work to build the audience first, because once I have the audience, I don't need the publisher, because my audience is going to get me the initial momentum I need to then reach out to broader and broader concentric circles of audiences and ultimately make my book a success. Look at Joanna Penn, right? I mean, Joanna Penn is, first of all, she's intelligent. She's very intelligent, very witty, very funny, and a good writer. But she has built multiple audiences and multiple spaces that she can call upon for all her different books at any time to help support her, and has become a bestseller and all these different things, self-publishing. So, I think that it really is the technician versus the business person idea.
I think that's beautifully put. Beautifully put. And it's definitely a roadblock for a lot of people who want to get published. So thank you for bringing that back to the forefront. Because I feel like I'm constantly banging that drum, and people just don't want to put in the work, really, and that makes me wonder if they're really serious about what they're doing. But that's another.
I think it can be serious. I mean, I'm 100%. There is nothing wrong with being a technician. What you can't be is a technician who doesn't then want to pay for someone else's audience. That's what you can't be, right? That's the unsuccessful author who's constantly complaining about traditional publishing and all these things. Is they just want to write, but they don't want to then pay for someone else's audience. You have to get an audience from somewhere. You either build it yourself or you pay for someone else's. That's how the game works. I mean, that's how life works, really. So you can be serious about your business and be like, I just am completely comfortable with paying someone else to bring their audience in to buy my book. And that's a completely fine way to do it. You just have to be okay with that.
Right. Thank you for that distinction. Okay.
Sorry, I didn't mean to jump in there. I was
on
my soapbox and I hadn't jumped down yet.
That's fine, and you're absolutely right. And I guess where I was coming from is that usually the conversation revolves around, and I don't want to pay for it.
Yeah.
And then that person is too much money.
Yeah, then I agree with you.
Yeah, and
that person is not serious, and I don't mean to be, but if that client, that person is not serious about and I get this in the insurance industry, right? So a big part of my work is doing consulting for insurance industries, helping them with content marketing, and I get the same thing. We want to be on digital marketing, we want to have a blog, we want to do these different things, but we don't want to pay for it. And it's like, then you're not really serious, because you either have to do it yourself or you have to pay for it. Those are your only two options. You can't not pay for it and have someone else do it. That's not the way that this works.
Exactly. I want to bring in a question that came up. Let me just. Okay, come on. There we go. Okay, Matt Rouse posted this early on, when I first posted this event, and it's a good question. I want to make sure that we don't miss it. Would you suggest crowdfunding on multiple platforms at once? For example, aiming for your goal on Publishizer, but running small goals on Kickstarter or Indiegogo at the same time? And
my personal opinion.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, sorry.
I was going to say, you did mention that you have an opinion on this, so that's why I want to make sure we got it.
Yeah, my opinion is that's probably a bad idea. And the reason being is it's confusing, right? Like, so say I am interested, say Matt writes a really great book on SEO, and I'm really interested in supporting his project because I know that he knows his stuff. And then, he says, well, you can get it here, you can get it here. And then I'm like, oh, well, why all these different places? That doesn't really make sense to me. Which one? Now I'm trying to figure out, like, what if you hit your Publishizer goal right away, but then your Kickstarter goal is low, and now you're like, well, no one go to Publishizer anymore, now you need to go. Just focus all your attention on one platform, right? Like, this thing is hard enough. Maybe if you're amazing at this and you have a tremendously large audience and you're just trying to test something that you know is going to get through anyways because your audience is large enough, maybe. But for the most people, it is hard enough to get this goal reached that no matter what your goal is, whether it's $10 or $10,000, that I would just focus on one platform focus all your attention, have your story there, make it a really good representation of the project that you're hoping to complete, and focus all your attention in that one space, because I think that it's just confusing. It's going to be confusing for you, because what's going to end up happening is people, what you find with crowdfunding is that it's a snowball. It completely follows the snowball running down, going down the hill analogy, right? Like you need all this momentum to get it going, which is what happens. You launch, you have your first day, and you get a ton of contributions, and the snowball starts rolling. But what happens is in the middle of this thing, it really bogs down. Like, it is incredibly hard to get someone to contribute, like if you're doing a 30-day campaign at day 15. It's just hard because the person's going, I kind of missed the initial momentum, and there's still 15 more days, so I'll just do something else. But as you start to get more and more contributions and you get closer and closer to your goal, people start contributing faster and faster and faster, because now it went from being this thing that maybe is going to be successful to looks like it's probably going to be successful, and a lot more people are willing to take a chance on a project that they feel has a really good shot of being successful versus not. And we talked a little bit about this in the green room, Denise, but it is a huge emotional investment for someone to contribute even $10 to a crowdfunding campaign, right? Like, you have to there's a lot of mental triggers that have to be tripped for someone to click the contribute button, because you're buying something that doesn't exist, right? You're saying, I believe in this person, in this idea, that they are going to create this thing, and then I'm going to get what I pay for. And that's a lot of trust. There's a lot of things that go into that. So it's everyone trips those hurdles. It has different. They need to see it closer to the end before they're willing to invest that. So you don't want to be trying to push 3 different campaigns at once, because the sale is just going to be incredibly hard.
I would say that definitely would dilute your efforts and dilute your message. Yeah. And one of the things that I've heard is that once you hit about the 50% mark on your contributions, that's when people starts moving faster as well. So it's like getting to that 50% mark is sometimes like really an uphill battle. But then once they do it, like what you were saying, that people say, oh, well, maybe this is going to go, so maybe I will put my money in, which is such an interesting thing, because, on Indiegogo, whatever you contribute gets distributed. But on Kickstarter, the campaign doesn't get funded unless it meets its goal. So there's no risk really to the person making the contribution. The real only risk is that it doesn't, that it gets funded, but that the person doesn't complete their project.
But think about the emotional letdown in the contributor if they contribute to a project that doesn't come through, right? Like, this is a huge wow, I'm going to butcher this word, psychology thing, right? Like, this is big time. Like, people smarter than me understand why people decide to make decisions and stuff. But if you contribute to something, even $25 for a hardcover, if that then doesn't happen, it's a letdown, because it took you so much to contribute that $25. You had to watch the video and read the synopsis and look at the table of contents and look at all the little graphics and see what the comments are before you finally decided to contribute. And then to have it not be successful, you're like, ugh. I was all jacked up for that thing to happen, and now it didn't happen, and it's a letdown. So, and a lot of people don't realize that, because Publicize is the same way as Kickstarter. A lot of people do not realize that their money gets refunded to them if it's not successful. A lot of people don't realize that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't know that either.
Because I had a lot of people email me and say, what happens if you don't hit 10,000? And I was like, you get your money back. Yeah. And they're like, oh, well, I better share this then. Yes, you should. Yes, you should.
Absolutely, you should. So that's a good segue. I like that segue, because I would like to know, I know you employed a lot of different tactics to attract people to the campaign, but could you talk a little bit about maybe the top two or three tactics that you use to activate and empower your audience?
Yes. So the first one is the same across anything that we do ever, and that's email marketing. Being able to put an email together and send it to a list of people who believe in you, gets them going. So email is huge. Let's see. Not only is it a lot.
That's all right. Go ahead. Yeah.
Sorry, I was just reading Shannon.
Yeah,
Shout out to Shannon. I'm a fan of Shannon.
Yeah.
Okay, so email marketing is huge. You have to put together and be willing to ask your audience who has subscribed to you by email to support you. I built for the 3 months leading up to the launch of the campaign, I built something called a Content Warfare Book Founders Community, which is essentially an email list and Facebook community that was dedicated to like the Austin Kleon show your work model of everything I did every step of the way I was sharing with them. So poor Mars Dorian, who I absolutely love, think he's one of the best, most unique illustrators kind of working the digital web with he has a very unique flavor, and I just really like him. And I chose him as to do the cover for the book because he embodies kind of this method of audience, story, attention, and all that the book is about. He did 10 covers for me. I made him do 10 covers.
Wow.
The poor guy, I couldn't get my brain on the idea that I wanted. I kind of saw what I wanted, but I couldn't figure out. So he did 10 cover designs for me before I finally chose the one that became the cover of the book. And I shared every single one of those covers with that community. So here's my thoughts on this. This is why it's not working for me. What do you see? And I got tons of feedback, and the people, there's about 179 of them on the launch day, people that joined that community. And basically what they said was, I'm going to allow you to directly market this project to me in return for you giving me kind of backstage access and some additional things that they'll get that other supporters won't get because they subscribe to that group. But that group played a huge role in the initial momentum, because here's 179 people that are completely activated. They're jacked up about the book. They feel invested in it because they've been able to give me all this feedback on the project. And when it went live, they kind of already knew what it looked like, right? So they felt a part of it, and they were sharing it. And people did a lot of really cool things with taking some of the images like you did and sharing those through social media. And that was an incredibly important part too. And the last thing I'll say is the trailer video. I had a lot of people email me and say I contributed to your book because I watched a trailer video. The trailer video really sold me on what you're trying to do here. So those would be the three. If I had to pick three, those would be the three.
Okay, excellent. I just want to bring Shannon's comment in too, referring back to your whole idea of community and trust and building that. Taking that step to give money, and he says, not only is it a lot of trust, but I believe it's a lot of motivation for the person publishing. I love that you noted that you should not bog down the process. So yeah. So
yeah, it is too. I mean, I tell you, I say this all the time on my show, but like feedback, comments, and stuff, like Content Warfare show, the podcast, like I do that completely for free. Like I don't have a sponsor. Occasionally I get people who contact me for speaking engagements. That's not really why I do it. I do it because I love the audience and I love the work and I love interviewing. And when people give you feedback on something, it's like rocket fuel. And that's what it felt like. It like really got me going, because people are like, oh, I love this, or I like that. Or other people would be like, I hate the way the cover looks. And a lot of people said that. So okay, let me go off on a tangent here for a second. So
go ahead.
I want to talk about people hating on your work when you're doing something creative.
Okay, so, that's good. Yeah.
So I am awful at visual design. I'm awful at it. I don't see visual design, colors, concepts. It just doesn't come to me. That's not the way my brain works. So I finally found the cover that I wanted. I just liked it. It immediately spoke to me. And I said, this is the one. We're done. I'm stopping. You can say whatever you want about the cover, but this is the cover. This is the one that's happening. And about 20% of the people in the group of 179, I probably got about 80 comments of feedback, hated it. Absolutely. It's the worst one out of all of them. It doesn't say anything to me. And the other 80% were like perfect. It embodied. So I kind of made a mental mark now going forward, and it kind of fits previous to my career, and you may have even seen this, but I try to keep like a 20% hate quotient, right? If 20% of the people hate what you're doing or hate the concept or the way that you're doing it, then you're probably doing something right. It's like that commercial. What's that? I always forget his name. Ricky Gervais. Have you ever seen the commercial of Ricky Gervais where he's in the car and his niece is reading the
Yeah.
tweets to him, and she's like,
Yeah.
Ricky's fat, needs to go back to Britain, you know, all this other stuff. And she goes, what does this mean? And he goes, I'm doing something right. Like, that is my creativity hater thing. Like, a 20% hate quotient. If 20% of the people hate what you're doing, then you're probably doing something right. So that, I'm going to
Yeah.
come back. We're back on the tracks now. I just had to jump
Okay.
in.
Well, and the other thing is that you're never going to be able to please 100% of the
Yes.
people 100% of the time, right? I mean, there's truth to that because you can't. It's just impossible to appeal to everybody all at once, and it means that you're not really focused and niched in if you are trying to appeal to every single person out there.
It's impossible. It's impossible. There are people who hate to hate. Those people you completely disregard.
Yeah.
When I say 20% hate quotient, I mean people who could possibly be willing to support you, but just don't particularly care for this thing. If you then have about 80% of the people that really enjoy it, you're good to go. You need 50-50 now. You might be pushing the limits. Maybe you might be being offensive or just producing crap work. But if you're really producing good work and 20% of the people just do not connect with it or don't like it or just doesn't speak to them, then you're probably on a good page because that means there's going to be this even more invested audience on the other side.
Exactly. Okay, so we're just at the half-hour point here, and so I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but I'd just like to get a sense of what's like the biggest thing that surprised you or that you learned or that you had aha moment about crowdfunding your book? I mean, because I know it was a big, huge project,
Yeah.
so what really surprised you about it?
What really surprised me, I would say, and this is going to sound like, hugs and rainbows and stuff, but like how awesome people are, right? People really and truly intrinsically are good. And I, by nature, am a positive person. I try to look for the good in people. I'm not a pessimist, is what I'm saying. Optimist. But it just was amazing to see the people that came out, people who I see occasionally support, like plus wanting something or commenting, but then when the thing went live, were like the first ones to jump in and be part of it. And I was like, wow, that's amazing that person who I kind of only knew tangentially or I felt was in this like outer circle that would never be interested in supporting this project came right in and became part of making it a success, and then would write me like a really nice note. And when you're trying to do a work like this, like a larger body of work, you have to have that support. Like it just, there's no way to get through it. I mean, it's an emotional roller coaster. You're hitting the refresh button on your computer like every 15 seconds to see if the money's going up, and like that drives you bonkers. Like you're stressed out, you lose hair, and but then you get that email and you're like, I gotta keep pushing. I gotta send another email because there's so many people that want this to happen. You gotta keep pushing. So I would say that I was just really surprised by how willing people were to come out and support the project and be just completely awesome. And it really has made me work even harder on the book itself. Not that I wasn't working hard before, but just really pouring myself into the actual finished project because I just want it to be something that people can be proud of, right? The only people that will get a hardcover copy of this book, I'm ordering a few extras to give away, but are the people that supported the book. And I want them to have that physical thing in their hand and be like, I supported this and I'm proud of this thing that I got, even if they never read it, even if it just goes on their shelf. I want them to be proud of that thing that they get and that they supported. So that was the thing that really struck me, was just people are pretty intrinsically cool.
Excellent. I would say that that's true too. And the thing is that you have built a fan base. You've built a community of people who love what you do, and you've been working on it for a long time. And so when you said, okay, now I have an ask, people gave. So, that doesn't surprise me that people supported you.
This was the first thing I ever asked for. And
Wow.
5 years of, first 3 years were very hobbyish. The last 2 years have
Hmm.
been much more focused. This is the first thing I ever asked for, so I'm very happy. I just couldn't. I feel blessed, I guess is the best word, that I have this community and all these people, and I just enjoy them so much.
Excellent. So when is your book going to be published?
So it looks like it's. I said at the beginning of September. It looks like the end of September. Mostly because I went back in and changed a few things when I said I really wanted to make it very really value. I kind of reinvested in a few sections that took me a few extra, like 3 or 4 days, and it's amazing how like 3 or 4 days on a section ends up stacking on top of each other, and now all of a sudden you're about 2 weeks behind. So it looks like the end of September will be everyone they'll be shipped. The books will be shipped out, and then soon after that, so maybe like the beginning of October, we'll launch on Amazon and all those network platforms and get the book out to the public for ordering and stuff.
That's so
Hopefully
cool. That's
before
not that
that.
far away. And
No, no, it's
can
not.
folks still pre-order the book or not?
Yeah, so technically you can, but it's a very manual process. If people want to email me, the only real way to do it is just, PayPal, whatever the amount is. If you want a hardcover, it's $25. You can PayPal me. I'm just keeping a list and send me your address. And if you're uncomfortable doing that, if you don't want a hardcover, you can just wait. And I'm completely cool with that too. I know it feels a little janky to send someone a PayPal payment, so I don't want to make anyone feel uncomfortable. So I have had a couple people do that, and I'm very glad for them, and they'll get a hardcover because, like I said, I'm ordering some extras to give away, so I'm just gonna give one of those copies to those people. But yeah, if you're not interested in a hardcover, then you can just if you want to just wait till it comes live, then that's probably the best way to do it.
So it'll
But
be a
if you
Kindle book?
Yeah, so it'll be a Kindle ebook. I'm gonna use CreateSpace for a soft cover copy,
Hmm.
and there's also gonna be an audio book, so you'll get to hear my my dulcet tones come through your earbuds for I think it'll probably take, counting how many words there are, about 7 to 8 hours to read the whole book. So unabridged.
Good, good. And where can people get more information about the book and about you? Where should they connect with
If
you?
you're interested in the book, contentwarfarebook.com is the best place to get more information on the book. You can actually download an excerpt from the book. I used to call it a chapter, but it's actually like 9% of the book. It's a little over 6,000 words is the excerpt. So it gives you a really, maybe more than anyone wants, but to chop it up would have seemed weird because it all connects in a concept. And if you don't like that excerpt, then you won't like the book. It really is a good representation of what the book will be. You can get that and get on an email list to be notified when we launch to the public at Content Warfare Book. And if you want more on me, just go to ryanhanley.com. That is the best place to connect with me, or on The Plus, which is where I spend most of my social media time.
Okay. Now, the last question. This doesn't have anything to do with your book, or,
Yep.
well, it might have something to do with your book, but because this is about adventures and visibility, I
Yep.
would like to know if you would be willing to share your most memorable adventure, whatever kind of adventure it is.
Okay, so this is completely non-digital marketing, and people may not be interested in this, but when I was 20 years old, myself and 6 of my buddies, we were going to college in University of Rochester. We jumped in a conversion van and drove 16 straight hours due south to Talladega, Alabama for the Talladega 500 NASCAR race. I don't know anything about NASCAR. I've never been interested in NASCAR. I was literally just going because I was a college kid and I wanted to go out. It sounded like a cool trip, right? So we're driving 16 hours. Here we are. We're all Northerners, like upstate New Yorkers, as Northeast as it comes, with the accents that come along with that. And we pull into an IHOP in Talladega, Alabama, which is not a big town if you haven't been there. And it was like the music stopped. It was like, and literally plates stopped clinking. Everyone turned and looked like, it was like they knew, like, one of these things does not belong here. And the waitress comes up to me and she goes, and I can't do a Southern accent. She's like, "What you boys doing here?" You know, and we're like, and I said to her, I go, "We're here for the race." Music starts back up. People go back to eat. I'm not kidding you. That's how this went down. Like, it was so obvious that we were not from the South or like traditional NASCAR fans that these people had no idea what to do with us. And then once we said we were going to the race, they like, "Okay, you can come in." And it ended up being a really, really wild experience that is probably inappropriate for a PG show. But just the experience, it was the first time I had ever done a super long road trip like that. And it was like going to another country for a 20-year-old from the north who had never been past the Mason-Dixon line. Getting out of a car was like being in a time machine or like being teleported someplace else. Nothing against the South. I love the South. It just at that point in my life was like this completely ridiculous thing, and it ended up being a blast. And I don't think I've ever been to another NASCAR race, but that race itself was a lot of fun. And it was NASCAR is kind of like going to a different place in the world when you step into the track. So that's just an adventure I thought I would share.
Yeah, well, that's great. That's great. And, the reason I ask is because, it's nice to get, some other perspective of, my guests and what they've done and what's made an impact on them in their life. So thank you for sharing.
I don't know how much positive impact that made in my life, but I'm pretty much down to do anything just about once. So.
Okay.
NASCAR. I may not be re-racking NASCAR, but I'll always have that story.
Well, I've never seen a NASCAR race myself, so thank you for sharing that with me. That gave me a sense of Talladega. So, thank you so much, Ryan, for being here with me today and sharing your experience with crowdfunding and self-publishing your book. I'm really excited about seeing it when it comes out and reading it, of course, and seeing how you do your launch too, because you've probably learned a few things about launching a book now too. That's like phase 2. Now that you funded it, now you get the launch phase. So
it's funny. I didn't even mention that, but the thing about crowdfunding is that you essentially have to do 2 launches. You have to launch crowdfunding, finish up your crowdfunding campaign, and then launch again. So I don't want to take up any more time. I just want to give this little tiny.
Right.
At the end of the crowdfunding campaign, when I saw that it was pretty much going to be successful, right? I kind of had a feeling for that, like the last few days.
Mm-hmm.
I started pulling back favors, right? Like, how you like ask people for, let me be on your show, let me do this, can you do this, can you send this out? I started being like, hey, do you mind holding off on that till September? Because you don't want to use up all your favors on the first one, now that you knew it was going to be successful. So it is kind of a delicate balance. Like, how many favors do you use up in the crowdfunding campaign? Because then you need to ask for more favors when you get to the actual launch of your product. And thankfully, it's all about having a great network and knowing people like yourself and all the people that we make connections with. When they have something, you help them. When you have something, they help you, and everybody does well. So that was a very interesting little thing. That gets probably point A or point B to things that I learned about crowdfunding is you have to be very careful about which favors you pull when.
Well, that's a good point. That's a good point. And absolutely, it is 2 launches because, of course, you want more people to buy the book, right?
Yes.
That was just the initial group. Now we want to go for the world, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm really looking forward to seeing how that all plays out, and I wish you all the best for that. And I'll be watching you. Remember, folks, you can get notice of my next Adventures in Visibility by going to adventuresinvisibility.com. What am I talking about in 2 weeks? I believe we're going to be talking about podcasting, so that's a pretty hot topic too. So go to adventuresinvisibility.com to get notice, or you can request to be in my Adventures in Visibility notification circle here on Google+. And again, Ryan, thank you so much for spending your time with me this morning. This morning for my time, this afternoon for you. And I wish you all the best and all the luck.
Thank you so much. Project. It was an absolute pleasure.
Okay, thank you so much. And have an adventurous day, everyone.